Okay, looks like most of our guys are in here. So let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining our educational webinar here tonight, guys. I'm Cole Shepard. I'm a partner at Legacy Group. I'm joined by my Director of Investor Relations, Josh Siegelbaum. What we're going to be talking about tonight is why we're in Colombia, why we love investing here so much. The structure is going to be pretty much been led by Josh. I'm going to jump in and give some real world opinions on our current portfolio companies throughout. And we are going to have time for Q&A at the end. So anyone who has questions, please feel free to type in the Q&A box here in Zoom. And at the end of the presentation, about 25 minutes in, we'll allot in about 5-10 minutes for anyone's questions for us, and we can get going.
Thanks, Cole. Appreciate it. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Josh Siegelbaum. I'm the Director of Investor Relations at Legacy Group. As Cole mentioned, I bring 10 years of financial services experience in banking, wealth management, and private equity across multiple regions, the Northeast, Miami, and Latin America. Legacy Group is an alternative asset manager. We target profitable investment opportunities with high social impact and environmental impact in Latin America, more specifically in Colombia. We generate value by leveraging our team's local knowledge and expertise to provide a link between our investments in developing markets and you all in the rest of the world. We give our investors the chance to invest directly in projects that not only produce favorable returns, but also leave a lasting impact. Colombia is a market that is absolutely ripe with opportunities. These 10 points on this slide are the top reasons why we believe Colombia is the #1 place to invest in Latin America. A few of these, which are my favorite, which stand out to me, it would be first, the human capital. The human talent there is sophisticated and qualified. Next, the venture capital market, #7 there. It is growing rapidly in Colombia. And then lastly, #10, the diversification. This is definitely on the mind of our investors, and we believe Colombia acts as a great diversification play in your portfolios. So first would be high upside with low initial investments. The current exchange rate for US-based foreign investors is the most advantageous it's ever been for investing directly in Colombia. On a purely US dollar basis, investments today cost investors investing into Colombia in dollars half of what the same transaction would have cost them back 10 years ago. Investment amounts to enter the market are therefore naturally lower today. Colombian businesses are proving to have the incredibly high growth potential that we see in emerging markets, with unicorns such as Rappi and others making foreign investors wealthy. This chart here shows you the US dollar against the Colombian peso over a 10-year period. Absolutely explosive since the lows in 2014, below 2000. So essentially, like I said in the last slide, a dollar today controls twice as many assets, all else equal, which creates a great opportunity for US investors who are entering the market today. This was my first highlighted point out of the 10. So that would be the human talent. So Colombia has many reasons to brag when it comes to showcasing its existing labor pool to foreign investors. Although the country has been historically seen as attracting investments only into the large areas, such as Bogota for the large corporate multinationals and Medellin for technology and entrepreneurship, foreign direct investment is occurring in all areas of the country, is what we're seeing. An interesting quote from Scotiabank's president and CEO, Brian Porter. He said, "Colombia is business friendly and open to foreign investment, and its young, educated, multilingual, digitally savvy population makes it a key market for recruiting leading talent." Colombia is strategically positioned with highly qualified human capital. One of our portfolio companies, Polygonus, has a talented team who are doing work in 3D art and design space. They also established an academy intended to further qualify human capital for their growing business needs. So I'd like to share some details with you regarding Polygonus, one of our portfolio companies. If the tech experts are right and we entered the 4th industrial revolution, then Polygonus is definitely on the front lines of that. The company provides services in 3D art and design, data analysis, and e-learning, among other innovations. They provide products and services to clients all over the world. Polygonus has experienced rapid growth since it was founded in 2019. They're currently expecting to produce $6 million in revenue here in 2022. The company has a vertical in 3D art and design and produces content as well as characters for digital productions. Within Polygonus, we have seen a surge in demand for NFT asset creation and for NFT video game production. Deal sizes range into the millions of US dollars, and new players are consistently coming to the market, looking to compete and make investments. The Academy is a new Polygonus company comprised of a team of artists and professionals who identified a need for local talent in their business. They seek to promote the development of the local entertainment and tech industries within Colombia through the Academy, and they provide students of all backgrounds the tools they need to develop their skills in the tech sector. The high-impact training programs are based on cutting-edge, immediately applicable techniques in the production of digital arts for film, video games, and visual effects.
So Josh is going to get a really cool video loaded up for you guys because really with this kind of business, you have to see it to really believe it and understand really what they do. So a lot of the guys on the call today were probably GCC investors. Some of us came down to see Polygonus. These guys are an example of a company that are just going to absolutely crush it in the next year or two. This is a company we seed invested late 2019. And to give you an example of the growth, it was three guys sitting in our office that Ad and I thought were good guys to make a wager on. Very, very talented, very intelligent. And this one is a home run company. I mean, to give you an idea on revenue growth, they've grown about 300x times the revenue when we invested in late 2019. So I'll give you a little bit more about the investment, a little bit more about the company after you see this video. But this video really just goes and shows you kind of the departments that they operate in. What you'll want to take away from this video is really the scale at which these guys have grown at in only 2 short years. And it really highlights the talent gap that exists in Colombia. And what I'd say by talent gap is the funding of talent gaps, finding needles in a haystack and saying, hey, these guys have real potential to do great things. So Josh, go ahead and kick it and I'll give a couple words after.
Thanks, Cole.
I love that video. I love these videos so much. These guys, the talent these guys have is just grown so exponentially over the last couple of years. And the projects they're putting out are just incredible. To put it kind of in scale for everyone on the call, what they're trying to ultimately do is create a VFX center here in Medellin for all of Latin America and make Medellin a hub for that VFX center. And right now, really the hubs are in Los Angeles and Montreal in Canada. They have so many projects, so many things to do that they needed more talent, and which is the rationale for the academy that got built. is that saying we want to not only train people in Colombia to be able to work on Netflix production, to be able to work on video game production, but we want them to actually get a job afterwards. So Polygonus hires the top 4% of every class goes to work at Polygonus. The 96%, really what they do is job placement for these guys and work in the next competitors in other games, whether it's Upwork or you're working at other contracting firms. It's truly an incredible business. And this is one I know from all the GCC investors I've taken there, for all the high net worth individual guys I've taken to see Polygonus. I have a list of probably 25 guys that as soon as they did a Series A raise, if I don't go to those 25 guys first, they're going to kill me. So anyway, this is one that we're massively proud of. It's a huge win for not only Medellin, but for Colombia and the region as a whole. And I really see these guys probably going to be one of the top technology companies here in Colombia within the next 2 to 3 years. But I'll hand it back over to you, Josh. I won't spend all the time on Polygonus.
Thanks, Cole. Appreciate it. So moving on with the top 10, beyond the human capital, which you guys just saw with our Polygonus video, Colombia has favorable macroeconomic characteristics. So the post-COVID recovery in 2021 was one of the strongest GDP growths in the world at over 10% for the year. Aside from merely growth projections, Colombia is really consciously focusing on sustainable growth, not just one-off years. At the end of September 2021, Colombia became the first Latin American nation to issue a sovereign green bond in its local currency. We expect that Colombia continues to lead the region in green investment innovation, and that its sovereign debt and financial strength will continue to appeal to a global investor base. Colombia also has a long history of democratic institutions. According to the Global Competitiveness Report prepared by the World Economic Forum, Colombia ranks as the #1 Latin American country for corporate governance. That bodes well for doing business there. The same report ranks Colombia #2 for both business dynamism and financial system stability. The systems within Colombia that we're seeing are far superior to the Central American nations to their north and others in South America. Colombia is the longest running democracy in South America and has repeatedly shown its support for Western capitalism, which goes a long way in establishing goodwill in the foreign direct investment market. The US is Colombia's largest trading partner, and that should grow over time. The opportunity for a revamp in the global supply chain has never been more positive for countries in Latin America, specifically 2 countries, Colombia and Mexico. Last year, a delegation of officials traveled to Colombia. They met with the president and discussed plans to counter what China's doing with their Belt and Road initiatives. As supply chains evolve and the US refocuses their key priorities away from China, Colombia will stand to benefit significantly. According to Marsh McLennan, if Latin America captured just 15% of US imports from its top 10 source destinations outside of the Western Hemisphere, the region could increase its exports of goods by $72 billion a year. We believe that Colombia is positioned to capture a tremendous amount of this trading opportunity with the US, especially and with things going on with COVID and supply chain. We think that that's really accelerated the chance of this becoming a reality. Colombia also offers many foreign direct investment incentives. Colombia is a country that offers a favorable business environment with a stable legal framework. The national government has introduced several incentives to support and encourage foreign investments into Colombia. These include things such as free trade zone regime, customs duty reductions, exemptions for imported raw materials and machinery, VAT exclusions for imported equipment, incentives for investment in science, tech, and innovation. They also offer incentives in other sectors, including agriculture, tourism, the creative economy, and more. This is a big one. The venture capital market in Colombia is growing rapidly. At Legacy Group, we're excited to participate in the drastic upswing in venture capital activity. While historically overlooked by venture capital investment market, over the last several years, VC investments into Colombia have skyrocketed. Investors like SoftBank are entering the market, and they're looking to place billions of dollars into venture capital opportunities. For those of you who don't know, SoftBank is one of the stars in the early investment world and a dominant global player, in large part to the Vision Fund. This is the world's largest venture capital fund, standing at almost $100 billion. In September of last year, SoftBank launched a $3 billion fund to invest solely in technology companies in Latin America. This is in addition to a $5 billion allocation they put towards the region back in 2019. So that in total is $8 billion dedicated solely to Latin America by SoftBank. Venture capital investment grew from just 20 million in 2017 to over $1 billion in 2019, as Colombia attracted more and more large allocators of capital. There's never been a time in the history of Colombia when more investors have been looking at early stage company investments at such a large scale. This chart here illustrates the acceleration in venture capital activity in Latin America. Deal value is up significantly in the region. Latin America is making its way onto the world stage of early company investment, and as a result, larger companies are being created and grown. According to PitchBook, in 2021 alone, there were 5 newly minted unicorns. That's a private company valued at $1 billion or more. 5 of these were established last year in Latin America. That's more than any other year in the history of the region. So what we're seeing is the birth of a venture capital hub in LATAM. There are also gaps in the business ecosystem that can be exploited. Entrepreneurs are flocking to the region to fill these gaps in historically inefficient industries, in markets such as banking and finance. Opportunities are being created given the addition of foreign capital, real-world human capital, and world-class technological integrations. For example, what we're doing at our portfolio companies. Deal flow is significantly lacking in developed capital markets. Firms have excess capital and valuations are through the roof. VC firms and high net worth individuals have to look outside their home markets for arbitrage level returns. As these inefficiencies exist on a macro scale, there is less competition in the market and the rewards are higher to the victors. Opportunities like our own at Green Coffee Company aim to control the entire value chain of coffee within the country of Colombia, not just a piece of it. It's not possible to be great at only one aspect of the value chain and to create a viable company. The most successful companies modify or recreate the entire value chain, or at least the vast majority of it. And they will make significant returns for investors as they become successful. Colombia has a large domestic consumer market. The population of Colombia is currently 51.6 million and growing. Domestic wealth creation is increasing. We're seeing that locally. And the middle class is steadily strengthening. Colombia's increasing move to digitalization with a younger population creates many opportunities in different industries that you wouldn't think of, such as e-commerce and the connectivity economy. The ability of domestic Colombian producers to sell to a growing, wealthier populace at home is growing every year and only adds value to foreign direct investments into the country. Finally, Colombia acts as a strong diversification play. This is definitely on the minds of our investors. Many of those who invest with us are heavily allocated in US-based assets and enterprises. We would advise anyone, given the current structural, political, and monetary issues the US is facing, it is an excellent time to begin looking outside of the country for investment opportunities. There is a lack of investable asset classes in so-called developed markets with potential returns in excess of inflation. Inflation is running hot at a 40-year high. The annual rate recorded last month was 7.5% in the US. That's the highest since February of 1982. Within the Latin American bucket, there's no better choice than Colombia in terms of stability and upside. So here's an example of how we've provided diversification for our investors. The Green Coffee Company, a legacy group portfolio company, is a consolidated coffee farming operation based in Medellin, Colombia. The company's business model allows us to control the entire supply chain, from cultivation through processing in our world-class facilities to direct trade globally with our end clients. Our goal from the start has been to open the Colombian coffee industry for those seeking high returns in a market they could not access, all by working with US-trained company operators. Some key points: we've created the top 2 producer of coffee in Colombia to be #1 here in 2022. We've structured it as a US-based business to make it as easy and frictionless as possible. We have a US holding company, and all of the operating subsidiaries and assets in Colombia flow up directly for easy access for investment here in the United States. The company is producing a specialty coffee product, and they're disrupting the Colombian coffee industry, which we'll get to on the next couple of slides here. Essentially, the business model, as I mentioned, acquire farmland, consolidate and develop infrastructure, and sell farm direct coffee. Coffee is a massive industry. Over 2 billion cups are consumed daily. When you think of Colombia, you think of coffee. It's the national product there, actually. And what we've done over the years is deployed $25 million of capital, which we funded across several rounds. and we brought in 230 individual investors to participate with us. We have the Green Coffee Company on its path to a targeted 2025 exit. So as expected, the Green Coffee Company has been making headlines lately. Our mission at Legacy Group is to find investment opportunities for you in Colombia in industries and businesses where we see the best chances for extraordinary financial returns. To be able to capture these investments for you and to better focus our deal sourcing efforts on your behalf, we've created a list of Legacy Group preferred investors. Better knowing our investors' deal preferences will give us a first mover advantage as great investable businesses surface for us. I've included a poll here through Zoom. You can access it here in the webinar in order to gather your individual preferences. So please take a moment to complete these polling questions during this call. So this is a picture from the farms of the Green Coffee Company. We control 4,700 sprawling acres after our latest acquisition in December. We regularly host investor trips. We generally fly you into Medellin. We meet you, we show you around the city. We do a day trip out to Salgar. It's about 2 to 3 hours by car, 20 minutes by air. We spend the day out there. We show you the size and scale of the operation. And then you get to see firsthand how we're opening up access for direct investments in the soon to be largest coffee producer in all of Colombia. It's very difficult to get access to large agricultural operations as investors are competing with big funds and people such as Bill Gates here in the US. And as it relates to Colombia and LATAM, there's a window for arbitrage, which we've seen and acted upon. But that window is becoming more narrow as more capital flows into the region. Nobody in the world has this deal, and I'm very proud of that.
Just so you guys know, that last picture is a real picture of the farms. A lot of people see they ask us sometimes and say, are these really your farms? They look like something out of outer space, but those are real. The purpose of the next couple slides is kind of to visually present kind of the difference between what we do at Green Coffee Company and what exists in the market today. And when we say Colombia is ripe for disruption, I mean, you need to actually see what's there to understand what we're talking about. So Green Coffee Company, we're the second largest in the country. So the whole board of directors, our chief operating officer, and our chief agronomist went to see the #1 player this past weekend. So what you're looking at on this slide right here in this picture is the #1 player, vertically integrated player right now in Colombia. Needless to say, when we went out there this past weekend, you get a huge bump in ego, and you know what we need to do to get to the next level. But our chief agronomist is basically good friends with one of the partners there, so we got the full walkthrough. And the purpose of this really isn't to poke fun or just pound our chest and say we're already great. It's really to show the underinvestment in the coffee industry really over the last 40 years, and the huge dichotomy between what exists today and what are we trying to do at Green Coffee Company. So Josh, if you wouldn't mind, go to the next slide. So the first slide was their infrastructure, and this is the new world-class processing facility that we opened at the end of October this past year. We have the most sophisticated infrastructure for coffee or wet mill coffee, which means processing coffee cherries through a process flow that exists in Colombia, potentially actually in the entire world. We have our second facility opening likely in 1 month. So now we have 2 of the largest and most efficient processing facilities in the whole world operating out of Salgar, Colombia. And we'll be going nationwide with another acquisition probably this year so that we can get harvest throughout the entire year. What we're doing in coffee, a lot of times people won't look at it as being rocket science, whether it's a consolidation of assets play, a consolidation of infrastructure, selling further down the value chain. It's a pretty typical agricultural business model, especially for M&A build out or private equity build out. But what exists in Colombia today, it leaves so much to be desired, and there's so many gaps in the market, is that what we've really had to do is recreate kind of the coffee industry. And I don't want to overstate and say we're doing it already, but we're making our way to recreate how the coffee industry runs in Colombia with the goal to make it better, with the goal to make it more efficient, with the goal to have the best and the brightest back working in the coffee industry again. So this is the outer end of the infrastructure. If we go to the next slide, you're going to see the actual machinery. So remember, everyone on the call, this is the number one player in Colombia, number one largest vertically integrated, the number one holder of agricultural land related to coffee production in the country. Josh, if you wouldn't mind, go to the next one. And this is in one of our facilities. So as you can see, I mean, we have agroeconomical engineers, we have industrial engineers, we have agronomists advising on everything we do in infrastructure build out, everything we do with new tree build out. And from a visual perspective, you can see there's a huge difference here. And not to say that we're the smartest guys in the world, but what we're doing is bringing real world technology to a country that hasn't seen it in 40 years, in an industry that hasn't seen it in 40 years. Green Coffee Company is a great example of one of the companies and industries in Colombia where you're going to see the world clicking back on. You're going to see companies like SoftBank investing tremendous amounts of money into industries, and just bringing them up to a global standard has huge potential, just massive, massive potential. So Josh went through and kind of talked about the amount of capital that's coming in via the VC firms. You're going to see the corporates largely piggyback on that. So whatever the industry, whether it's agriculture or real estate or hospitality, you're going to see tremendous capital flows coming into Latin America. Where we think it's going to be largest is largely in the Spanish-speaking countries, will be Colombia and Mexico. And Green Coffee Company is a great example of one of just taking an industry and kind of turning it on its head and saying, from an outsider's opinion, we think we can do this a little bit better than everybody else. And then every day we try to do better. And this year, I think we're going to reach number one. So for all the investors out there that are already in GCC, thank you. And for all the investors that are looking to get it in the future, hopefully we'll have something available for you in the next year or so.
Thanks, Cole. So what's next for us at Legacy Group? So we have an international leadership team, and we intend on continuing to collaborate in order to identify more disruptive investment opportunities, such as Green Coffee Company and Polygonus, and then giving access to those to you all, our investor base. So we also plan to continue the remarkable acceleration of the Green Coffee Company and position that business for a successful exit in the coming years. We encourage investment into only selected industries within Colombia, since not all industries are equally promising and some are even unavailable for individual investment. At Legacy Group, we have operated on the ground within Colombia for the last 7 years. We have reviewed and placed capital into numerous projects. Our team passes on the vast majority of opportunities that are presented to us, actually. And we've seen Colombia as never having been more fertile for investment. We're seeing potentially market disrupting, industry changing opportunities in agriculture, real estate, energy, digital art, fintech, and more. We believe we can get you access to these deals as we compete financially with others, bringing large amounts of capital to Colombia, leveraging what we have built with the Green Coffee Company, with almost 25 million invested, and with our portfolio investment in what we believe to be Colombia's leading video game and VFX company, Polygonus. We continue to meet more entrepreneurs and businesses who would like to partner with us and our investor base. These relationships are leading to more opportunities for our investors than ever before. Investors should care about what we're doing because we're providing unmatched diversification into carefully vetted, disruptive projects in Colombia. Our investments are uncorrelated with the traditional holdings that make up investors' portfolios and have the ability to provide significantly higher returns. As for the investor experience, we're looking to continue to provide best-in-class services, investment opportunities, structured reporting, scheduled trips out to Colombia, and more. In summary, Colombia is the market that US-based accredited investors and those looking for new investment opportunities with the potential for outsized yields should be focusing on. We will continue to open up access to this incredible market to our investors and are excited to keep you updated on new investments as they become available. I want to thank you all for your time today. You'll find my contact information here on this closing slide, as well as a link to our website. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly after this presentation with any questions, or please put them in here in the Q&A box, because we're going to get to Q&A in just a moment. And please, my ask is that you don't forget to complete the poll if you haven't done so already. It's highly important that we better understand your preferences as we drive the business forward and look to bring new, exciting investment offerings to you. So now I'd like to open up for any questions. So we have a few that were put in here. First one, how can I participate in future deals as they become available? Cole, do you want to take this one?
I'll take that one.
Sure.
So first one is probably want to get on the preferred investor list. The reason to do this is really to segregate people who like reading the articles we write and people who really want to get access to deal flow. I would say my partner and I probably get a company a week that we get something pitched at us that we think it might be worth us taking a look at. I probably have 3 or 4 of interest right now. I would say in the future, for investors who are looking at the things that we were doing, whether it's GCC or Polygonus, I think we're going to go about it in 2 different ways. One will be a portfolio company approach, which would be we raise for a specific portfolio company, or we're potentially looking at a fund approach as well. So if investors are interested with either one of those, please note it to us. And basically what we're going to do is the investors that are on this preference list, once we know what you're looking for, when we put ourselves in a position where our partnership invests in a new company and they're looking to raise more capital, obviously, than Adam and myself and Josh can put in, we'll bring in new investors, the thing that we think are safe for new investors. And LP investors like to see something with heightened yields, of course, heightened returns, and obviously the potential for big boy money, for big boy gains is what we'd be looking at. So I would say that would be the best way to get going.
No, that's great. I see a few more coming in here. So please, guys, if you have questions, type them into the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to all those. Next one, can you explain how investing with Legacy Group can protect my portfolio against rising inflation? I'll take this one, Cole. So as mentioned earlier on in the presentation, inflation is currently at a 40-year high. Most recently, 7.5%. That's a pretty big number to overcome. So in order to even effectively make 0, you need to make 7.5%. So there are limited traditional investments available that consistently beat such a high rate of inflation. In terms of what we're doing through the Green Coffee Company, deploying capital into real assets and acquiring farmland makes for a great hedge. Coffee prices have more than doubled in the last 12 months, up to $2.50 a pound, which our investors have benefited from greatly. In terms of investment performance, we have targeted net returns for our investments at multiples of the current inflation rate and forecasted in our recent investor presentation, our Series B investors to receive 7x net on their investment through a 2025 exit. So we'll look for at least those same kind of 7x or greater returns on all investments that we bring to you throughout the portfolio.
Let me just add a little bit on that, Josh, because I think that topic is very important for most of our investors on here, the theme of alternative investments. At Legacy, we'll always look at alternative investments, by the way. We'll always look at private equity, private debt, something that obviously we think we can beat what a public market security would be. And that's the portion of the portfolio that we would fill in, whether it's a private company like we do with GCC or potentially a private venture fund that we create down here in Colombia. But always looking to beat inflation and always looking to beat our counterparts in the United States, where I think it's nearly impossible to get any real yield in total return these days.
Thanks, Cole. Next one, other than coffee, what agricultural investments are you offering or planning?
Sure. So I've looked, before I started with coffee, I actually really liked cacao. We've had a couple opportunities to participate in that market in the past. We haven't thrown any capital in at it yet. Really, the focus has been the Green Coffee Company over the last several years. Within Colombia, there's so many agricultural processes, it's wild. There's so many things you could potentially invest in. But for us, we'll always look at things that have scale and a readily determinable market. I'm very unlikely to go into an exotic fruit sector, for instance, and pull in LP capital from the United States, because I don't know if that's a very niche product. And, you don't have a guaranteed offload like you would have with something like coffee or cacao. At the moment, we're probably going to be focusing on, in the agricultural space, probably in green coffee. I expect that we'll probably have another offering here within the next year or so. So investors who are looking to get into ag in Latin America, with the ability, obviously, for a US IPO or a US based corporate buyout position, green coffee is that product, and it does cover off that niche. But if investors are looking at ag projects and looking for things outside of coffee, if you fill out the forms and say, look, I'm Steve, I'm looking at other ag opportunities in Colombia, we'll always keep that in mind. And as we have products that come up, we'll of course reach out to you first.
Oh, that's great. All right, next one here. I have a real estate portfolio and stocks. How can investing in Colombia diversify if I already own real estate and equities? I'll take this one, Cole. So okay. First of all, diversification isn't just about asset classes, but geography. It's important for investors to not only diversify what they're investing in, but also where they're making those investments. We've opened up the Colombian market for investment directly through US-based offerings, which have made the process as easy as possible. With some of the headwinds we're seeing in the US as it relates to monetary and fiscal policy, it's important to diversify into relatively uncorrelated markets. And as explained throughout the webinar, we view Colombia as the go-to market for investors seeking diversification in LATAM. Also, while you have real estate and equity in your portfolio already, investing in private offerings in the alternative investment space can open up the possibility for significantly higher returns, which are not tied to the performance of your current portfolio.
This is a good question that came in. If you're able to reveal this info at this point, what are the two quote unquote next best things offerings Legacy is putting together? Thanks. I love that question. So, as I kind of mentioned, we're always looking at new deals. Right now, for instance, I have potential deals that I'm looking at in financial technology, in prop tech. I have something that looks really interesting in energy. And I actually, right before this call, I actually had a call with a guy about a different kind of ag project. One thing to keep in mind, kind of with the way Legacy operates and in the way we kind of, run our business, is I'll never push out a project before I think it's actually ready to capital raise. So we're not really in the business of pushing as much product as we are trying to create value of portfolio companies. So I would say out of those four, I've been reviewing 3 of them for probably 6 months. Usually to get into an investment, that would probably be like the minimum time we would review something before, for instance, my partner Adam and myself would even place our own capital in a project. To raise LP money from other people, like I'll be way more conservative and I'll take even longer amount of time, most likely. So I would expect in terms of what are the next things that we'd be raising for, I would say coffee is the most likely. I know if Polygonus had the opportunity for outside investment, which right now is kind of, it's almost unlikely because it's really odd situation that they're profitable. They're growing massively quick. And for instance, we have like the chairman of the board of one of the largest banks. We have one of the presidents of the largest insurance companies in Colombia coming into their offices like all the time because they just like to be around these guys and they basically love everything they do. And they offer them money and we always advise them not to take it unless they actually need it. So if they got to a position where they had a good use of capital and they wanted to take LP investors from the United States, that would be one we bring out to our audience immediately. And then the other investments that we would look at likely will be in that seed or Series A kind of phase where you have a business that's established. Maybe it has maybe $500,000 to $1 million in revenue, and it'd be something we take a look at and maybe take a small bite out of quite a few of them if we had a fund, or we take a more, centralized approach and heavy-handed approach and say, let's try to get some control. Let's try to make sure this company is getting to the next stage, and then we'll bring LP investors in afterwards.
Great. Well, that's it for the Q&A, guys. Thanks again for joining us. Hopefully this was informative, and I look forward to more conversations with each and every one of you.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for joining.